Welcome, everybody, to Writers Morning Out, sponsored by the North Carolina Writers Network. I'm Penny Cottrell, and today is our semi-annual Slush Pile event. A couple of quick announcements before we begin. The fall conference for the North Carolina Writers Network is November 7th to 9th in Wrightsville Beach. I know that there are several of us going, so I hope to see you in person there. I will put in the chat the link to that so you can get the information.
It's kind of warm in Monroe.
Let's see. Could I ask everybody to mute unless you're speaking? Thank you. Hi, Tracy.
Hi, sorry, I'm kind of running behind. I couldn't get logged in for some reason. It's crazy.
That's okay.
I had to
That's
go to two
okay.
different browsers. I was checking browsers. It was weird.
That's
Hello,
okay.
hello, everybody.
Last two announcements I have, there's the Doris Betts Fiction Contest. The deadline for that is October 31st. And then there's the Barracks Bays Poetry Contest, and the deadline for that is November 15th. And last but not least, Tracy is doing her wonderful craft workshop on Tuesday, the 28th at 7 p.m. It is the last one of 2025. So if you want to get any last minute craft tips to get you ready for your writing in the coming year, I encourage you to join us there. It is with sincere gratitude to Steevie Parks, Ty Stumpf, and Noah Stetzer for being here today, not only taking their time to be here with us, and Tracy Crow as well, not only taking their time to be here with us, but taking time to read all the pieces and give some really thoughtful feedback on it. If you will be muted unless you're speaking, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Steevie Jane Parks. She is a retired clinical psychologist who spends her time narrating audiobooks and painting abstracts. Noah Stetzer is Associate Director of Bull City Press out of Durham. He is also the author of Because I Can See Needing a Knife. I love that title. And his poems can be found at various journals. Noah's work has received support from the Warren Wilson MFA program from writers, Breadloaf Writers Conference, Lambda Literary, and the Adirondack Center for Writing. He currently lives in Salt Lake City. Ty Stumpf is the Humanities Department Chair at Central Carolina Community College and is the author of the chapbook Suburban Burn, which was published by Main Street Rag Press. And Tracy Crow is the founder of Tracy Crow Literary Agency. She is also the president and CEO of Millspeak Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to supporting the creative endeavors of military veterans and their families. She is a former assistant professor of journalism and creative writing and teaches writing workshops throughout the country in fiction, memoir, and publishing. She's currently teaching in the online MFA program for Southern New Hampshire University and is a visiting instructor for the Queen's University of Charlotte MFA program. So welcome to our wonderful reader and judges. And would it be helpful to you all if I shared the screen with the works? Yeah, okay, I will do that. Let's see.
I think it'd be amazing.
Can everybody see that? We're good? Okay.
Okay.
All right. Who would like to start? Stevie, would you like to read the first one for us?
Sure. Okay, fiction, The Worst-Natured Muse. Sunday evening, Claire stood naked in her bedroom and examined her abdominal scar under the lamplight. The defect glowered with a full 8 inches of ugly redness, and the lingering pain allowed her but a tenuous connection with her body. Strange, she thought, how she'd lost 15 pounds and her belly was finally flat, but the marred flesh did not seem like her belly at all. He had claimed her body and marked it as his. He took possession of her physical being for his pleasure and discarded the remains without a second thought, erasing her own claim. The surgeon said her liver would grow back in time. The scar would fade to some degree and her liver would become whole again. The body would heal itself, independent of her will. She could not own the progress. She ran her fingertips over the scar and caught herself thinking about Beth. Beth was such an animated, vivacious woman, eager to drink in what life had in store for her. Death had chosen Beth over her, and she grieved Beth's loss every day. She could not fathom the depravity required for such a vicious act of snuffing out that exuberance. Claire picked up a long t-shirt from the floor and pulled it over her head. Violated and disfigured, she could no longer bear the sight of the body he had ruined, and nurtured the belief that no one else could either. Jerry Masconi was a kind and gentle soul, always bringing her flowers or inviting her for coffee at Veniero's. He'd been patient, but he wouldn't wait forever. Claire couldn't bring herself to encourage him. He deserved a woman who could bring him joy and companionship, a whole woman, not the scarred and broken creature she'd become.
Thanks, Stevie. Noah, Ty, I can't see everybody. I can only see a few of you.
I can start. First of all, hi everybody. It's good to be back with you all. I came close in a couple spots to wanting to call. One phrase that, and here's my issue, I think, and this is an issue I have sometimes with other works as well too, is there's always a hard balance for me as a reader between how conscious people are of who and what they are, and then the kind of somewhat unconscious things they're doing at the same time. So I'm always up a little up in that. The phrase a tenuous connection with their body just felt a little too connected for me, for the fact that she's having these challenges that she's working with. And then a little further down, a small thing I think that's an easier fix for me. When we mentioned Jerry for the first time, I stopped for a moment to try to clarify with myself, is Jerry the name of the doctor? And I realized that I may be a single reader in that one, but that slowed me down for a moment and took me out. And that was a moment that I didn't want to, because we were moving into some interesting kind of emotional territory talking about him. So just a little heads up on that issue that I had as well.
Okay. You want me to go next?
No,
Noah?
I can go. I can go next.
Okay.
See, Ty, it's great to see you guys, and hello, Ryan.
Yeah,
Thank you for having me back. Just like old times.
I know.
I think one of the first things that I reacted to were the number of different people on the first page, and just managing who everybody was. It's not easy. So, dear writer, who you are, it is a little confusing. At first, I thought that the initial use of the pronoun he had claimed her body. And when the next part says the surgeon said her liver, I just assumed it was the surgeon who had claimed her body. And it took me a couple of readings this morning to realize there's like a bad guy. But I didn't know that right away.
I'm going to interrupt Noah
Yeah.
and confess I still have that understanding as of right now. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
So like,
maybe I misunderstood then. But
no, I'm not volunteering that I'm correct.
Okay.
So, but that is I was operating with that as well too.
I was like, oh, it's not the surgeon. There's another bad guy, and the bad guy took Beth's life, but not the narrator. It's not the narrator. The narrator's someone else. I keep thinking Claire is the narrator, but that Claire isn't the narrator. But the narrator knows an awful lot about everybody. So I got confused as to sort of like who I was paying attention to, and then who all the different people were on the page. It's absolutely gripping. I mean, I think everything is here. Please don't misunderstand me. It is very like, I am in it to find out. I just wonder about like the placement of some of the information. I just think, when we kind of take a side trip to talk about the scar and how it will heal in the future, and all of sort of like, it kind of takes us out of the immediate moment, and we're already way ahead of we've ratcheted forward into the future, and then we come back to her fingertips, and it's like, let's just stay in the moment. We can come back to that idea of not owning her own progress. I mean, I think that's still important. But I don't know that we need to go look, far into the future about where the scar will end up, rather than staying in this moment right now in the room with Claire, right? Like, she's touching the scar, she's putting the t-shirt on, she's thinking of these things. So I think I'd rather just stick with that moment, that fraught moment that you're drafting here.
I agree completely with both Ty and Noah. I got confused on the pronoun situation exactly as you guys did. And I went back with surgeon and I thought, okay, she's referring to the surgeon. And once I got to the next paragraph and I realized that someone had snuffed out the life of Beth, then I realized, okay, she must not have been referring, or he or she, the writer, must not have been referring to whatever, to the first he as the surgeon. So I was starting to put some of that together. I actually liked this section of Jerry Moscone was a kind and gentle soul. I think it probably would have worked better if there had been maybe a space break there to kind of give us something else. And if the other areas have been clearer for us, because it kind of gives us some other moment of change that's coming. But one of the things that I want to bring up that I see too often, and I'm wondering if this is what's at play here too, is that oftentimes writers feel they have to play this game of so much ambiguity in order to keep a thread of tension or intrigue or mystery there. And they do that by leaving out a lot of what would just be the normal type of details that we would need. And instead they're withholding all of that from us. And so it makes it feel false, and it makes it feel less than a real moment of her contemplating the scar and Jerry and how he might react. Does that make sense?
It does.
So sometimes there's too much ambiguity in an effort to create tension and intrigue instead of just basically coming out with some of it, because we're going to find it out anyway. So just kind of keep that in mind. I would say do a lot of first page reading of books that you really, really admire that are in this genre, and study those techniques that you see on the first page. And I think what you'll find is that there's a lot less guessing and ambiguity and a lot more clarity, but propelling movement forward.
Propulsion, yeah.
Does that make sense, guys?
It does.
Yeah, I agree. I think that us having just some tension to move forward, I think is enough to move forward with. So we can figure out who some of these other characters are as we go along. But I agree. There's some interesting pieces here that I think that can do that.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that this could be built, whatever this is. We've got somebody, she's managed to survive an attack apparently, but it's taken out somebody, Beth, maybe a friend or somebody she knew very well, enough to know that she was this kind of person. And so, but yet now she's thinking about Jerry and possibly going to, so, I mean, we've got a lot of pieces working here, but it's so unclear and ambiguous that it's a little muddled. And I don't think it needs to be.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Hope that's
That's
helpful.
really helpful.
Oh, before we go on, did we do the sounds, or are we not doing that anymore? The sounds.
That's a good question.
Okay.
Are you all,
Well-
do you have your vuvuzela?
I've got
Every
my
s-
little train whistle.
Every sound I try doesn't work. So like,
I know.
I've got a harmonica right here. I've been testing for like 10 minutes, and you will not hear it. I will try. Nothing.
A little bit.
No, we heard a little tiny bit, but
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Like a
So
Tiny
just
little note.
wave your hands.
I'll be dramatic. Yeah.
Okay.
Or just scream, stop.
Very good for the reading atmosphere. Absolutely.
All right.
Right.
Everybody
Did you
knows
have a-
what's-
Did you have a noisemaker you wanted to try out?
Oh, that's good.
We
Definitely.
can hear that one. Mhm.
Finally.
All right.
It took me 5 years to find one.
Better late than never.
Yes. Brain trust.
All right, we'll move on to our second one.
Okay.
Stevie?
This one is called Brain Trust. It's fiction. The voices woke Josephine Barlow, the summer intern at Dreamscapes Laboratory, a cutting-edge brain research facility. She lifted her head from the drool that had pooled on the desk and glanced out the window, then at her watch. Mickey's hands pantomimed 4 a.m. She smiled. Good morning, Daddy. The watch was a gift from her father on her 6th birthday, her reward for learning to tell time. It was the last gift his cancer would permit him. She stretched and wiped the cobwebs from her eyes. Beyond the window, darkness loomed. The eastern horizon still slept. It would be another 2 hours before the approaching dawn, and another hour after that when the first technicians would arrive. She was alone, or so she thought. Joey, everyone in town called her Joey, stretched, put a pot of coffee on the hot plate, and listened carefully. The voices. She could hear them clear as day. Why is she here? I can hear her. Shut up, Josephine. I don't hear nothing. Ain't no one here. You're scaring Sylvia. She already has nightmares. The voices began during her second week at the facility. At first, it sounded like sobbing, a childlike whimper. More recently, it seemed that several different voices were arguing. However, it was not possible that anyone could have been left in the lab. Dreamscapes was involved with government work, highly secretive stuff. No one was allowed to remain in the lab after hours. Yet there they were, just behind the door, leading to where the brains were kept. There were 3 of them, each floating in a separate container. A spider web of tubing pulsed with fluids, keeping its tenants alive. A last-ditch residence for those whose bodies had failed them.
Nobody called in, right? Well, since I went last time, okay if I go first this time?
Of course.
Okay. There's an awful lot about this that I really like, especially the ending when we find out about these floating brains. And this is likely where the voice, I was like, oh my God, I've got to know more about this. But I will say there are some mechanical issues. So as an agent, publisher, I would have been a little bit concerned. A couple of things like I thought Mickey's hands were pantomiming a 4-8. I actually was thinking there was somebody else in there with her at first who was across, doing, hey, it's 4 a.m. You just woke up. So I think sometimes we need to take a look at the ordering of our details and not assume so much of what the reader might realize what Mickey we're talking about. But also I would say that I'm seeing a lot of this, and I don't know if it's me, if I've got to go back and do a refresher on some basic grammar stuff, but I'm seeing a lot of confusion about verb tenses and a lot of hesitation about using a verb tense in the past perfect so that we can see that that what is being referred to in that moment actually happened before the past version of that's now. Does that make sense? So, and I'll give you an example. The voices began during her second week at the facility. Really, this is supposed to be taking us back in time. So that should probably read, the voices had begun during her second week at the facility, right?
Right.
Because that way we get a more clear reading instead of we're already in a past tense. So we need the past perfect tense, at least the initial read of it. And then the rest of them from there can be, it sounded like sobbing. It seemed like this. But the first one that sets that section off needs to be in the past perfect. Is it past imperfect? Past perfect, I think it's called. It's been a long time since I've done that. But I'm seeing a lot of that. And I've even had some students tell me that they have been basically just indoctrinated never to use that. And I'm thinking to myself, well, then your writing really wouldn't make a whole lot of sense all the time because your reader's going to be confused. Which part of the past are we talking about? So just look at those mechanics and think about that. Look at the placement of some of those opening details so that the reader has a better understanding and we know who Mickey is right away, if that's that important, which apparently it is since it's in the opening paragraph. But the ending, that last paragraph, wow.
Yeah.
I love that. Those details were awesome. And great reading, Stevie.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I can jump in. No, you Ed. That's good.
I wanted to echo a lot of what Tracy has said. I'm really intrigued by everything that's on the page here. And I hate to sound like a broken record. I feel like everything is here. I guess my impulse is to suggest maybe rearranging some of the moves that occur on this first page, just to consider like the gripping the reader. So let me use an example. The first sentence on the page is very thorough in terms of giving us the information we need. It's got a person's first and last name, their position, the company, what kind of company it is. So it is doing a lot of work. I don't think, though, it's helping grip the reader right away beyond just sort of doing a setup. And so something that but it can stay, don't misunderstand me, this sentence can stay on this page. I'm not saying it needs to go away. I'm just saying, like, think about how you want the moves to happen. So what if the page started with Joey? Everyone in town called her Joey. Stretched, put a pot of coffee on the hot plate, and listened carefully. You know, like, what if we started there and then started feeding some of those sentences from earlier on the page into the action? So we're sort of right into the action right away. We're hearing the voices, and then we're getting some backstory. So just a suggestion. Everything is on the page, friend. It's all here. I'm just, look at what you've got here and think about, like Legos. You know, what if you moved this thing up here? You know, and then how do you get the move down here? You know, it's just choreographing what you've already got here is my suggestion.
I'm going to amen that as well. I played a little bit with what I thought the impact would be if certain paragraphs were in different places.
Yeah.
It was so it was not my desire to get rid of said paragraphs. It was just the order in which they appeared. One little phrase kind of stuck out to me, and I think it could go away with that switch. Excuse me, that switch. Paragraph that begins beyond the window. Last part of the sentence, or so she thought. That always feels like a setup to me, and there is a transition that happens there too. I think if we switch some stuff around, that could go away. I mean, there's something powerful about just a simple sentence like "she was alone," and then even if we connected in the voices, that kind of thing. So yeah, I agree. I think maybe bringing a more immediate action up would be what we need, and then our conversations about the voices and those kind of things would flow pretty quickly from there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, I would just jump in because I noticed I had written it down. You know, be sure to watch and guard against anything that's cliched language, like clear as day. Unless you have a character who's just loves to talk in cliches and uses it in dialogue, and that's how we recognize that, you know, character, which could be funny. But you know, I would try to watch for any of that. I mean, sometimes they just slip in, you know, so it's no big deal. But just watch against that, especially on your first page, because you don't want your agent or editor to be thinking, if they left a cliche on the first page, what more am I going to have to think about mechanically as I move in, you know, to reading more of this. But yeah, I agree. Everything is on here. Everything's on here. Just a little bit of massaging, a little bit of maybe shifting around, playing with it. I mean, I could have even seen the voices, you know, had begun during her second week at the facility.
Nice.
That was one of the things I played with.
That's a nice one too. Very nice. Yeah.
And then it allows you to introduce the place and then give its name.
Oh, good. Yeah. Oh, see, these are fiction writers. I'm a poet. I'm just thinking about like sound and fury. Those guys know what they're talking about.
You do too. Give me
Thanks.
But anyway, yeah, and also just be thinking about like your verb tenses where you're gonna, you know, I'm just big on verb tenses these days for some reason. It's like I keep running into this stuff. Okay. Anything else, guys? But I love what this suggests, this story. I mean, this is, oh my God.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Stevie, should we move on to the third one?
Okay, this one is memoir. My cell phone rang just as I was starting to pull up my stockings to go to work. It was my dad calling from New York. Mom's dying, and you'll need to get on the next plane to get here before it's too late. It was 6 a.m. the Monday after Thanksgiving, 2006. We were living in Carborough, North Carolina, and drove home late the night before after visiting my in-laws in Lexington, Virginia. My 10-year-old son was peacefully sleeping in his room upstairs, and my husband had just started making coffee. If I were going to get to the hospital in time to say goodbye to my mother, I needed to get busy fast. I knew exactly what I had to do and how to do it, but my mind and body felt oddly disconnected. After several minutes passed, I realized that I was compulsively walking around and around in our tiny kitchen, as if driven by a motor, and didn't seem to be able to stop. I needed to get in touch with what I was feeling, no matter how painful, and the only way to do that was to stop pacing and to let whatever was going to happen, happen. Only I couldn't do it.
I'll jump in first. I played around. I don't like the suggestion, but I'm going to say it out loud anyway. I know that's contradictory. But I kind of played with thinking about this second paragraph first as well. Maybe it was inspiration from our prior piece that was making me think that way a little bit. I just went back and forth on that. I think one of the things I'll observe, though, I'm going to do something I don't do a lot. I'm going to forecast my expectations based on what I've read here. News like your mother's dying is, generally speaking, considered to be dramatic news. But your second paragraph is the sentences are more lengthy. They're kind of they kind of spool out. I'm going to expect that there are complicated feelings about this mother's passage, and that it doesn't feel quite as frantic as perhaps some other characters' pieces would. That's not a criticism. Just I'm going to go ahead and dedicate my comments to my expectations moving forward. If, however, it should be a more frantic thing, I would suggest then this paragraph be chopped up a lot more, a lot quicker. So I'm just going to go ahead and kind of suggest like what I expect in the future is a thoughtful but also kind of long-term look at this situation. It doesn't feel like, oh shit, now what? It feels a lot more like just a kind of a general confusion about how to proceed at this point.
Yeah, I had similar. It's interesting. I and maybe I didn't consider this, but maybe it was based on the previous submission. But I too was looking at the second paragraph and thought, if I were going to get to the hospital in time to say goodbye to my mother, I needed to get busy fast. That's a hell of a first line. Shit, right? Holy cow, you know? And then the second line was, my cell phone rang just as I was starting to pull up my stockings to go to work. It was my dad calling from New York. Da 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 da. And then I knew exactly what I had to do and how to do it. But my mind and my body, you know, like it goes back and forth between the franticness and the I don't want to call it, it's like backstory, but not really. But you know what I mean? It's sort of like, it's incredibly important information, vital, but just sort of how we're delivering the information. I kind of had the same impulse, Ty, that you did. Just thinking about moving the energy from that second paragraph up the page a little bit more to really pull me in. Because I wasn't sure, is this person upset? Or is this like a recollection from way back when? And like, we're gonna get to the upset thing on the next page. Because it wasn't clear, but I got the sense that there is some like franticness in paragraph 2. And so to your point, my expectation was like, oh, I thought this would be different. And maybe I'm misreading it, I don't know. What do you think, Tracy?
Well, from someone who writes mostly memoir or has written mostly memoir, I will say this. I don't feel as if the writer has quite found the opening yet.
Ah,
I feel like the writer is writing to get it out on the page, but isn't clear yet whether this will be the opening or whether the opening might be 20 pages in.
gotcha.
Once, you know, the writer has a chance to massage and move things around. So that's what it felt like to me. So as an agent or an editor, I would have had to have stopped because I would have felt like I was working or reading the work of a writer who's not quite certain of where this really opens. And some of that could be part of purposeful because the narrator's trying to give us an opportunity to realize that she's also confused and moving around about how she's expected to feel right now or whatever. But it's got to read with more certainty and direction and purpose for the reader on the page than it does in this state. So I would just say keep going. Just keep going, keep getting it out, keep looking at things, you know, keep playing around, read a few memoirs that you really like, and ask yourselves as you're reading as a, you know, writer, not as a reader, but as a writer, ask yourself, why did this author start her narrator this way on this particular page, especially when you realize there's a lot more story that comes afterward. And there was a lot of story that came before that moment. So I would analyze several opening pages and several structures of memoir to find mine. And then I would go back and I would look at a lot of the language on this first page, because I think the language is fine. I mean, but it's very basic. And so if we're going, and this is where I think some of the verb tenses kind of hurt. If I were going to get to the hospital, I needed to get. And so you're seeing some of the same type of language repeated in several ways. And so it could be shortened. It could be a more direct, like to get to the hospital in time to say goodbye to my mother, instead of if I were going to get to the hospital. So see, we're stretching it out. If there's a reason to stretch it out, then it's got to be obvious to it. We've got to think, wow, that was really clever that the writer did that, because that's slowing me down. But I don't think so. I don't get that sense. I feel like the writer's still trying to find her way through this, and that's fine. That's fine. Keep going and keep writing it all down, and then study a few memoir opening pages and see what are these more gripping details that are really, really necessary, because we don't have any connection yet emotively with the narrator, with the son, with the husband, with the mother. I'm not feeling any emotion yet because it hasn't been offered to me yet. It's all numbing. Does that make sense? And so, you know, for a memoir, you want to find out, where can I pull in some emotion? Where can I make something feel so real and gripping? Even the tiniest details sometimes will do it. I mean, it was a great detail about pulling the stockings up. That's a good one right there. So I don't know if this is helpful, but I would just say, keep going. I mean, I see a lot of, you know, obviously this is going to be good material, but just, I don't feel like the author's found her way yet there, but keep going. Does that make any sense, guys?
Yeah.
It does. Yeah, I think there's an interesting contrast, like the bluntness. I'm rereading what the father says. The bluntness of mom's dying as your opening line for him as a person suggests a kind of bluntness overall. So I mean, there's something interesting to kind of play with there, even if this narrator's relationship is different than that bluntness, or maybe not. Maybe they all are just these are matter of fact things, and these are how you handle them. So yeah.
And I understand that we've had a lot of talk about no flashbacks, no, like drawn out, 10-page flashback, that starts at the bottom of page 1. I mean, I get that. Memoir is a little different. In memoir, you can actually slip in a little bit of that because you're telling a personal story, and the reader recognizes that this is memoir and that there's this life that comes before. So you can slip in a few details about how long this has been going on, or why we're feeling this way, or anything sarcastic about mom, or not, or emotional about mom. Those little details can fit on this opening page, to kind of give us some extra feel for what the dynamics are here. And then we can see how the narrator is going to play them out. But memoirs a little differently in that you can do a little bit more of that flashing back, even if it's just 2 sentences, to give us some kind of quip. Like I had just thought it was another one of mom's, psychosomatic illnesses, that sort of thing. I'm just making that up. But I mean, that would have told us right there, like, oh, okay, sure, Dad. See what I'm saying? Yeah. So if we have some little quip here or there, that gives us a little bit more to hold on to and feel hooked.
And this is where I will also plug Tracy's wonderful memoir, Eyes Right. If you haven't read it, it's a great study in memoir.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that.
All right.
I can see everybody.
I know.
I'm sorry, guys. We hope you're still there. We hope you're still listening.
All right, Stevie, we've got this next fiction piece. Good luck with pronouncing this.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Well, we believe in you, Stevie.
Yeah, go Stevie.
Well, we don't know any better anyway, so you can say whatever.
That's right. You can say whatever you want.
I'll tell you the truth. I read it for both my husband and my son, and they said, you better work on pronouncing those things. But I didn't. So you're getting what you're going to get, I guess. Okay. All right. It's fiction. In the time when they were fair, the daughters of Kundrin were loved, Heled, Gwladys, and Gwendon, from Canu Heled, Songs of Heled, written circa 19th century. Heled lay rehearsing in her nuptial bed, waiting for her new husband to finish his drunken revelry downstairs. She was on her back, shivering between sheepskins and holding her uncle's dirk close to her side. She held the blade straight up, practicing upward thrusts into the air where she guessed her groom's chest would be. Her left hand nervously pulled tufts of wool loose from the bottom skin. Oh God, please let the time pass quickly and release me from my misery, she whispered into the dark room. Oh God, please make time stop. But she knew that he would not grant either request, having ignored for months what she wanted most of all. She had prayed for time to run backwards. If her father Kundrin were alive, her brothers could not have done this to her. The room was cold, the chill made worse by the fear she lacked courage or strength enough to carry out her resolve. Throughout her wedding day, she had told herself, I must stay calm. I'll smile at these Saxon curs with their strange ways and repulsive speech. They mustn't see what I'm thinking. She had managed her calm facade well, even when Prince Kundalin and her other brothers had left the wedding party early to make their way back towards Powys. In their last conversation, her oldest brother had been short and dismissive. Guys?
I have to come out of the Dungeons and Dragons closet and admit that my growing up was full of all of these books. Lord of the Rings, all of it, over and over again. Not a surprise to anyone, I'm sure. So, friend writer, thank you. I loved it very much. I don't have a place where I was like, oh, like I did not have that sort of what we're doing today where like it's Friday and the editor's like, ugh. I didn't have that with this. I thought there were some really well handled things on this page. For instance, there's a lot of people on this page, but I was able to track them all. I couldn't get over. I made a little list. I was like, the woman in the bed, the husband, the uncle, God, her dad, her brothers. There's a lot of people on this page, but it doesn't feel like I was able to follow it all. I was able to. So well done, very well done. And then what you've done to reinforce, I was thinking about how many times you have to, like in marketing, how many times you have to send a message before someone remembers it. And so I was like, nuptial, new husband, grooms, wedding day, wedding party, all the way down the page. So I was like, oh, I appreciated that. I didn't notice it when it was happening, but when I went back as an editor to see how you had done what you'd done, I saw that you mentioned it 5 different ways coming down the page, and I really appreciated that because it seemed to really keep me placed exactly where we are and what the hell's going on. You know what I mean? So that part I knew. I didn't have that question. So yeah, keep going.
I agree overall. I think one thing that helps this reading too is the focus gets gradually a little bit bigger. We basically start with her in a bed, and we pull back just a little bit to the night in the bed itself, and then pull back a little bit more. And I think in doing those phases makes sense in my head. So yeah, between me knowing, okay, nuptials and my assumptions about that is helpful as well too. I only had 2 little small things I just want to mention for a moment. The word dirk, which I had to look up third line, means dagger. I assumed it did, but I almost wanted just the word dagger so I could keep moving, and then come back to dirk later. Only because I had a moment of like how I saw the word blade and I was like, okay, how big is this thing? So it did take me a moment, and I realized that's probably the right term. I respect that, but I'll admit my ignorance, but does my ignorance take me out of this immediate moment? I guess is the question there. And the only thing I'll mention is down towards the bottom there, the Saxon curs with their strange ways and repulsive speech. I felt like she'd already, by saying Saxon curs, I was with the ideas there. Strange ways of repulsive speech actually sounded a little more disconnected to me. This felt like a moment where perhaps we could dig in a little bit more, because I know what the word cur means. I know what my associations are with it. So this is also a moment potentially dig a little deeper into the insult, in a way that I think would even more suggest her absolute feelings about these people, as it were. So, but with that said, I guess I felt comfortable with the reading. I'm always a little concerned when I see a language that I'm not as comfortable with and the names that come from that. Not because I'm bothered by it. I'm always just concerned, will I remember who's who? You know, what my associations are. And so far, so good as far as that goes for me. So.
Yeah, I concur with both you guys. I really enjoyed this piece. I will say that the opening line threw me and took me out. Bear with me for a second. Haled lay rehearsing on her nuptial bed. And I'm like, where are we going with this? What exactly is she
Tracy,
rehearsing
I didn't
here?
even think about that.
Oh, I thought about it, and I was very fine with it.
It didn't even occur to me. It didn't occur to me.
I wasn't quite sure where we were going to go next, you know? So I'm just going to throw that out there, because that could throw a lot of people, you know, when she's in her nuptial bed, she's rehearsing. So just kind of keep that in mind. You know, once I got down to where the blade and the thrusting, I mean, that I got that. But I mean,
is this the part where I point out the word Dirk looks like something else too when you talk about her
Yeah.
uncle's jerk? Okay, cool. So
Oh, you too?
Well, I mean, you know, I'm sorry.
love it. It's so great. It's like a switcheroo. She's waiting. She's rehearsing. She's on her back.
She's rehearsing.
She's shivering in the
What would
sheepskins.
you be rehearsing?
And then it's like Uncle's Dirk close to her side. It's like a perfect little switcheroo. That's all right.
Well, anyway, just dear reader, just be aware that really threw me, and I went back and I was like, okay, she's
No, it's fair.
rehearsing
It's
already.
that's a legit comment. Yeah.
Yeah, like she's gonna
Yeah.
make sure she enjoys her night, regardless of his drunkenness downstairs.
Right.
So anyway, I kind of got thrown out by that, but I kept going, and it was all really, really well done, and just enough of the details. And like, you know, you guys have said, I didn't get lost anywhere, no matter what was going on. I mean, it was moving backwards and forwards, and I was getting it, you know. And that's really masterfully done. Remember that when we go into indirect dialogue, when we're talking about thoughts, take those out of quotations and put them in italics when we're talking about our thoughts. Or keep this in mind, you don't even need that, because we're in her point of view. So all we need to say is, unless you need to point out the exact specific words that she used in her thoughts for some reason, you can just take all that out. You don't need, you know, the italics or anything. Let me get over that. Where is that part? Where, you know, she said she had told herself, I must stay calm. So she had told herself to stay calm, smile at these Saxon curves. You see, because we're already in her point of view. That's something Stephen King talks a lot about in his book on writing, is that, you know, we feel like we've got to either put it in quotation marks, we got to put it indirect. And he said, we're forgetting we're already in the character's point of view. We don't need any of that. Unless you want to, she's reminding herself of an exact word she used to one of her brothers. You don't even want to call any extra attention to it. Just, you know, she told herself, stay calm, smile at the Saxon curves, you know, that sort of thing. Okay. But other than that, keep going. Wow. Yeah, I'm eager to see how she does after all that rehearsing.
Who knew Slush Pile could be so much fun?
Yeah.
Oh, I knew it.
All right, Stevie, on to
Only
our
one
next
that thought
one.
that when they
I was with you, Tracy. I thought a little
Okay.
bit too about that first line.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. This one is fiction. It's called A Night to Remember. Janine Jacobs had always known she was capable of murder. Blood snaked toward the bathtub drain, and a smell of freshly minted pennies filled the room. Outside, bass from Turn Down for What rattled the door. People laughed and shouted in line. No one had heard a scream, only grunts they'd mistake for drunken sex in the bathroom of the Alpha Epsilon Delta house. The tub was the obvious place to let Eric bleed out. If he hadn't staggered in reeking of beer and entitlement, if he hadn't tried to pin her against the wall, his erection pressed against her. None of this would have happened. Eric gurgled. Blood spread like spilled ink across his Mapleton University t-shirt, dyeing the yellow letters scarlet. His eyes fluttered, glassy and pleading. In pre-med, Janine had learned the symptoms of a collapsed lung. Pneumothorax, she repeated. What she hadn't learned was how long it would take for someone with a stab wound to die. Blood foamed at Eric's mouth, and his lungs wheezed and whistled. She turned on the faucet. Water hissed from the shower head. Eric flinched. "Hey, come on, I gotta piss," someone yelled and pounded at the door. Each beat of the music twisted Janine's stomach tighter. She ran her hands under the water to rinse the pair of beard trimming scissors she'd managed to seize from the counter before Eric could get on top of her. Crimson streamed away like watercolor. The fist pounded on the door again. "Hurry up, I'm dying out here." Janine's heart galloped in her chest. Stress-induced tachycardia. She inhaled the metallic smell and blew out a breath. Keep it together. Being capable of murder was one thing. Cleaning it up was another.
Yeah.
I thought there was a lot here to like.
Agreed.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I didn't get lost with anything. I thought, the opening line was a killer, no pun intended.
Absolutely.
Or maybe I am.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe I am intending the pun. But that was a great opening hook. It's like, oh my God, how's she going to get out of this with this party going on out there? I hope there's a window in this bathroom where she can escape or something. So I'm intrigued. I mean, as an editor agent, I'm going to be like, okay, where is this going? Sort of thing. So I thought this was really quite good. Great details, sound, imagery. I mean, a lot of sensory details going on there. I can sense the party going on outside the bathroom. I mean, I thought this was really strong.
Yeah. I think too, right? This first and second sentences are examples of what you've been talking to us about this morning or this afternoon with verbs, right? Had always known, but then blood snaked. So we get the sense of like one's long before the other.
Yes.
I really appreciate that. I hadn't thought about verbs in a while, so I really appreciate you bringing that up, Tracy.
Sure.
I feel the same way. I'm just like, friend writer, well, kudos, well done. This is really, really terrific. And again, when I went back through, I was trying to figure out how you did it, right? I was trying to deconstruct it in some way. And I think part of what I really appreciate is Tracy's, let's go figure, your verbs. Because you give us like a little backstory. We had like the tub was the obvious place, and then we get that nice long sentence that just puts all the action in the past tense, right? Really interesting choice. None of this would have happened. But then the next is Eric gurgled, period, right? It's just very smart how you go from sort of this long, lush sentence with a lot of verbs in the past tense to like, now we're back in the present tense. Eric gurgled, blood spread, his eyes fluttered. Like you keep putting an envelope around the backstory information, right?
Yeah.
Because between all of that gurgling and spreading and fluttering, we have Mapleton University t-shirt, which is like a vital piece of information. It's just, friend writer, well done. Kudos to you, whoever you are.
Let me add one thing that I did forget, and that was
it.
that I kind of got tripped up a little bit by the smell of the freshly minted pennies. I understand about the copper, but how many of us have a chance to really smell like a bunch of freshly minted pennies? And she's a pre-med student, so she could have had other references for copper and would have had reasons to know what that smells like instead of freshly minted pennies, unless that's going to be a payoff, and a very, very important payoff. Like her father works at the Treasury Department. I don't know, but unless that's there, that I would say allow her pre-med background to give her some other kind of reference instead one that takes us out. But yeah, I just really enjoyed this. Okay, I'll shut up.
I really did too.
I appreciate the planting of seeds. Like you don't
Yeah.
directly say to us they go to Mapleton University, but I assume so because of the T-shirt. So and I'm good with that. And if I'm never told that ever directly, I'm good. So I appreciate those kind of hints that keep us moving the entire time. I noted one choice, and this is just me acknowledging a choice, but also suggesting there may be other choices there too. When Janine learned the symptoms of a collapsed lung, I also wondered about if Janine, well, I mean, I assume she would, if Janine knew how to give first aid. And if that offering, if that is stated and she doesn't choose to, that makes her even a little more cold and calculating, perhaps. I'm not saying that's what you want your character to be, but if that's what you're going for, there might be a place to play with that instead there. So because you
Yeah,
learn
and
how
she
to,
would have known probably as a pre-med, she might have
yeah,
known what would require that, how to open that up very, very quickly.
right. It just started making me think about like since she's known all along there, I assume she doesn't stop a bleed out. So, but you don't know how long it takes. But anyway, just a choice made, and I'm actually not weighing in that it must be X or Y, but there may be a place there to play, especially when I plant a few seeds about just how firmly she feels about her ability. I also want to note I enjoyed the last line that we had with us there. Cleaning it up was another. I think it's a good setup for what's going to have to come next. And as Tracy mentioned, regardless of what this cleanup is, if it's her climbing out a window or whatever, we know this is the next moment afterwards. So, and I appreciate that we've acknowledged that, and it is a way to then move on. And so we're not stuck in this particularly horrific moment. But we know that in some ways, almost the harder part is coming, apparently, because she already knew she could do this, but the cleanup does sound potentially problematic. So,
Yeah. Quick question for you. Do you guys know what Turn Down for What is? Is that a real song?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Okay. I'm old, so
I
I
was
don't know this.
wondering, I was really wondering about that, but I didn't look it up.
Okay, yeah. I was just
It-
curious because anytime I see titles like that, I mean, unless it's basically Beatles and Rolling Stones, I'm like, I'm out. You
Yes.
know? I mean, or the Grateful Dead, I'm kind of like out. So I'm always cautioning my students when they're writing things like, how many people are you denying and understanding, or how many people are you including with this cultural reference? Getting them just to look at those things and whether it's worth using that or make it a little bit more generalized or whatever. I don't know. But I figured if you guys knew what it was, then great. I'm just old.
I
So,
appreciate the specificity again in that way,
yeah.
but fair game. And of course, what it does is it does mark people for time. So like if you make a reference to a Beatles song, in theory that could be today until
Yeah.
until the day they released it. So there's always a back and forth about that and how quote unquote needed is it for the reader to know it in order to move forward. It does have a pretty hard baseline though, so it does help cover stuff up. That's
Okay, good. Now I'm gonna have to
that
go
part's
listen
helpful.
to it.
The signature, yeah.
I love bass. I'm gonna have to go listen to it. Okay. Yeah, I really am curious how she gets out of this and what happens from here. So
Yeah.
good job.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Let's see, Stevie. Here's our next one.
Okay, this is called Turtles All the Way Down, and it's creative nonfiction. I remember when calamity befell my first pet. I had just changed the water in my turtle's terrarium. It wasn't a terrarium. Actually, it was just a 12-inch glass bowl with a rock in it. It wasn't really a rock either. It was merely a chunk of black tar with gravel embedded in it that had broken off from the edge of the crumbling driveway in front of the old white farmhouse, my childhood home. The turtle really was a turtle, one of those turtles the size of a silver dollar. It came from W.T. Grant, bought with my saved up allowance. You don't see silver dollars anymore, and selling that species of turtle was banned years ago. For that matter, W.T. Grant doesn't exist anymore. Anyway, the care and feeding of the turtle fell to 10-year-old me, a job I wasn't very diligent at. One day, a strong foul odor reminded me that the water in the terrarium was not just the turtle's swimming pool, it was also his bathtub and toilet. To keep it from running away, I put my pet turtle, a pet with no name, in a shoebox along with a rock, also unnamed, to keep it company. I then emptied the old scummy green water from the terrarium and cleaned it thoroughly with hot water and bleach, a protective disinfecting process. I refilled the terrarium with the new water, then resettled the turtle and rock in their clean abode. When I returned an hour later, I noticed the turtle was in the water but wasn't moving. When I reached to pick it up, the water almost scalded my fingers. The realization hit me that the tap water I used was hot water, very hot water, and I had killed my pet turtle.
You
I
guys
did
wanna
this
start?
to I did this to fish years ago when I was a kid. Exact same thing. So it was
So
fish. I
you
wasn't
too
that
are capable of murder.
sad. Very much
You're
so.
all,
It,
it's
it
all
was
coming
the
out. It's all
it was
coming out.
it was the cleanup that I hated. I appreciate this piece overall. I've got a couple things. One of them is I'm assuming the writer knows this, but as a heads up, Turtles All the Way Down is also the name of a novel that came out a few years ago by John Green. So just heads up on that because that association was immediate for me. And potentially not what you want, but that I'll just heads up on that bad boy. I appreciate the payoffs every so often. The first paragraph, where this writer notes that there aren't silver dollars anymore, nor this nor that. I appreciate kind of that acknowledgement of I know this is a quote unquote old story. That worked for me. I also appreciated just the detail of the rock not rock.
Yeah.
That felt like a real thing, and I immediately understood. I was with the visuals of it and all of that. I appreciate that as well too. The With that said, I was pretty good with it. I'm curious where we go from here because this feels like a bit of a finished product in some ways already, or how this is going to connect to the next version of a turtle or whatever the case is, as the title suggests. So I'm curious about that because this feels like this could be a done matter at the end of this page. And if so, I'm wondering what pieces of this will then show up later on if it's a longer work. So I'm a little questionable there. Only thing I might note is a very simple thing. The last sentence I might suggest to a very, very hot water period. I had killed my turtle. I might leave that as a sentence all by itself, just as a kind of kind of a punch at the very end of it. So.
Good. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Noah?
I think this might be connected to the last sort of this reads like a memoir. I feel like this is
It is.
sort of
it's
in
got
that
creative nonfiction.
Yeah, but it has that same. I'm feeling the same kind of thing I felt with the other one that's called memoir. Like I'm curious about the voice of the person today versus the person they're describing in the past. You know that voice, Ty, you sort of pulled some of the places where that voice is talking to us. You know, like the turtle really was a turtle, you know, and like, yeah, W.T. Grant isn't there anymore. Like there's this definite voice of the current person. And I think it would be, I would like to hear a little bit more of that on this first page. I would like to hear more from that voice on this first page. And I don't necessarily need as much detail on the cleaning of the terrarium. I understand why it's important because of the payoff, but there could be a place there for the today voice to comment on the younger version's behavior in a funny sort of, you know, graceful, you know, full of you know, forgiveness way. I just feel like that there's sort of that, right? There's sort of a knowing narrator kind of behind this story that's making these little comments, and I kind of want to hear more from that person because, to your point, Ty, this is done. Like, here we have it. Here's the story. So if I got a little more taste of that person who's telling me the story, I think it would lure me to read the next page.
Okay. I like a lot of the voice that comes through, and this is what you two have also talked about, you know, those certain places with where we get this specificity.
Yeah.
But it has like this Holden Caulfield
Yeah.
kind of, you know, voice
Yeah.
that's going on there, which I really, really like, you know, like,
Yeah.
well, it really was a turtle, but you know,
Right,
but
right.
it was the kind that, you know, it's got that whole
Yeah.
Holden Caulfield kind of thing on that opening page of, you know, of that novel. But but I don't feel like here's what happens a lot of times. What we feel like we have to do is we feel like we have to set up the reader, like this is what we're going to tell you about, and then we're going to tell you, and then we're going to tell you what we told you. So
Yeah.
in a sense, that's what's happening here. In that I remember when calamity befell my first pet. So in other words, we've already set up a thesis statement there.
Right.
We've already told the reader how this is going to end.
Right.
Now we just got to fill in all the details. And instead, the writer could use that amazing voice that goes on about, the silver dollars anymore, for that matter, neither is that species of turtles, could use that voice to start off with something like, I don't recall an age that how old is the narrator in this when it happens? I don't think I have it. Okay, I'll just say he's 8. Okay. When I was 8, my grandfather took me to W.T. Grant, where I, just pleaded for this, turtle, blah, 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 blah. So in other words, let's start it with some of that and then give us some of that, that great voice that's going on in there, and then build up to that moment of how it happened, instead of just, here's what I'm going to tell you. Now I'm going to tell you how it happened. And now I just told you what I told you I was going to tell you.
I forgot about that. That's one of my favorites. Yeah. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Go and anytime we in memoir, and believe me, I'm guilty of it too. If I could go back and rewrite my memoir, I would probably rewrite the whole thing, because it was written like, I don't know what, 18 years ago. But when you use language like, I remember when calamity befell, then instead of just like, when I was 8, my grandfather took me down to W.T. Grant's, because he knew I wanted a pet, and he knew about the turtles that were down there. Well, by the way, they don't even sell those turtles anymore, but that sort of thing. And then we started to get this buildup where he was supposed to be taking care of this turtle and didn't really know what to do. And then he ends up, sadly, killing it. And then we need to find out where we go from there. Like, how does that, is there going to be a whole series of these where, that are connected to pets and sadness and grief and loss or whatever? I don't know. But just rethink the opening, rethink how that can be done just a little bit smoother.
That's good. That's smart.
But the voice, there's a lot of good stuff going on there with the voice, especially in that toward the end of that first paragraph. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, he's 10 years old. I thought I saw something about 10. Yeah. Okay.
All right. On to the next one. I think we've got 2 more left.
Okay. This one is just fiction. The train departed. Jude sat between Dora and Anna on the plush Pullman bench and giggled when they sighed in unison. She was oblivious to the enormous change that had just occurred in her world, while her mother and aunt were dumbstruck by their chaotic departure. With no time for a proper goodbye with their father and the unexpected blow of their mother's last-minute absence, they now rested their teary eyes on the large window where Lithuania's undulating fields of golden wheat and tassel corn streamed by. Yossel sat across from them, marveling in their presence. Like a shepherd watching his flock, his heart overflowed with renewed love and a strong sense of duty. Yet though they were physically reunited, he felt as if he were watching them from a distant hillside, his absence during the past year made painfully visible by the metamorphosis of Jude from dependent toddler to a young girl with insatiable curiosity. He'd missed so much. His left hand absent-mindedly stroked the mustache that no longer framed his face. He wondered about Dora. Had she changed too? As if hearing him, Dora caught Yossel's gaze briefly before dabbing at her eyes and turning back toward the window. Could they rekindle the loving relationship they once had? Yossel's secret departure from his own family several days earlier was less hurried, but no less emotional. His parents had begged him to reconsider, and though his younger siblings mostly kept their opinions to themselves, not one of the 6 said they'd follow him to America. The Leibowitz family was staying in Lithuania. They embraced the revolution and wholeheartedly expected it to disable Russia. Maybe he shouldn't have been swayed by his brother-in-law's insistence that their only recourse was America. He wondered, would Dora have stayed behind with him?
Noah, you want to start this time?
Sure. And this is a return. This story has been in the slush pile before. I remember this scene, writer.
I don't remember this.
I do.
Ty, do you remember
I don't.
I do. I
this?
remember
You
this.
do?
I do.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
I love
Or
Tracy. Tracy will not believe that you were.
I am crazy. That's also very
that is
possible.
good.
Yeah, this is
No, no, that's fascinating. Keep going. I just don't remember this.
the next version of something. I think we saw this once already. Yeah. Um, this is my unvarnished response was this is a fantastic like backstory of everything, writer, you need to know to start the story at the top of the next page. Like everything is here about all these different people, what the situation is, what's happening, all the different relationships. But I feel like it's almost like the beginning of an Agatha Christie movie where like some narrator introduces all the characters and you're like everyone's on, oh, maybe because they're on a train I'm thinking of that. And so you're like, oh well, we've got all these characters, they're all on a train. So like, and we got their backstories for each one and how they're connected. Now what's going to happen? So that's kind of how I read this. I was interested particularly because I remember this story. And I love how everything moves smoothly from place to place, moving through the carriage from person to person, and then giving some backstory. It just feels static. It's like a picture. There's not a lot of activity. There's a lot of information that's well handled. I wasn't confused about the number of different people, which has come up today. Nothing like that. I just feel like the thing now, like what's going to happen, and I wish something like was happening on this first page that gave it a little more urgency, or something like that's going on right this second that's creating some reason for me to really want to keep going. Does that make sense, Tracy or Ty?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean about like the Agatha Christie movie where like all the characters sort of get like they get a picture, like there's the cameras on the character and then somebody makes a sentence or two about them and then they go to the next person. It kind of moves that way, or am I wrong?
No, I agree. But of course, and I'm going to say something I will admit dumb now. But of course, we have the advantage of the camera showing us a person to go along with that. So we kind of sort of house them in our minds, and we don't have that advantage here. I know we all know that, but that I was a little more. I was not confused about who was who. I was confused about who was important. And that's one of the things that I was. And when we ended it towards the bottom there, wondering when Yosel was wondering about would Dora have stayed, that feels like those are the two folks I'm supposed to focus on first. Yeah. And maybe, and so I might suggest that that's where we start, is with those two folks potentially, and then start to fill in some of these other characters in a little bit, if that is where the tension lies. That's what kind of hit me there. Was as I was trying to figure out who everybody is, my question was like, who's important? Yeah. And that's where it kind of that's where I wanted a little bit more. And I don't disagree with what Noah's saying there at all. I think in some ways this story's about to get started. But I think some of these things can be filled in as we go there, because we've covered at least in some small portion, a couple of days, two different groups of folks getting onto a train and all meeting up. And in the process, I've also had to kind of think through, who's connected and why. So I think if we start with two, if Dora and Yosel are our folks, maybe to start with them, and then these things start to catch up with us as we move forward.
I think that's a really insightful piece of feedback. Yeah, that's a good one.
I don't remember this. I got lost with the characters. So I'll just start there. I get Jude sitting between these other two characters. And then I get, while her mother and aunt were dumbstruck by their chaotic departure. So then I had to go back and go, so Dora and Anna are mother and aunt, which one is which? And then with no time, proper goodbye with their father. So where's her father? I mean, so I was really, this reminded me of your classic Russian novel. Where there's a lot of people, a lot of stuff going on, and
Mhm.
a lot of dynamics, and like, okay, well, I need a diagram, in
Yeah.
dense in a good way, but dense, and in that kind of static feel. I always associate that, I'm sorry, with Russian literature, just that feel, the heaviness of it all. So here's what I kept coming back to, and that was that I wasn't sure this was really the opening, because it's all this telling
Yeah.
with little slips of some action, but it's basically all telling us the backstory. And so what I was wondering was, what did those moments look like when they were all discussing who was leaving and who wasn't, and saying the goodbyes and the packing and doing all of that? To me, that felt like that would have been a gripping, part to witness. And then they're on this train. But I mean, I'm not the author, so I don't know. And it's interesting to read that there's the secret departure from his own family, several days, less emotional, less hurried. But I felt like we got robbed a little bit of kind of knowing like more of the showing instead of getting all the telling aspects of it. So I don't know if that makes sense. I could be completely off, but I just wanted to give you some impressions on how I felt. And I do agree that the Yosel and Dora angle seems to be, but I can't figure out if Dora is the aunt, the mother of Jude, or what. I'm not clear on that. So I would say just keep pecking away at it, keep working on it. Again, look at some novels in the genre and look at how they're handling pacing. Look at how they're handling the parsing out of details. Look at how they're handling time, and just, see if there's something there that you can emulate or even model. But I got a little muddled with it. Am I
All
off,
right.
guys? Anything you want to add in there?
No, I think you make a really good point. I agree, because it isn't until it wasn't until I got to the bottom of the page that I had a sense.
Yes.
We both have said that it's Yosel and Dora, because up until then I thought everyone was equally important, and I needed to keep them all in my head because something was going to happen with all of them. And then I got to that and I thought, oh, it's these two, and so that I like a lot of what you both have said.
That's where you really start to pick up the conflict too.
Yeah.
And that's what you need from the beginning, is this conflict that's going to grip the reader. And
Yeah.
so when I know that there's a secret departure, like Yosel's secret departure from his own family,
Right.
several days, less hurried, whatever, and some pieces of that would have gripped me and pulled me in, and before I got introduced to the others.
Yes.
And then
Yeah.
then he sees them at the station, then he gets them in the train. Now
Right.
he feels like the shepherd. Now, so, but if I knew that there was like this revolution going on, and there were parts of the family that were backing the revolution and were eager for it, for what it was going to bring. Of course, we all know what happens, but
Right.
it's bad, but they're backing it. Okay. We see the conflict, and we see the need for haste and the secret and all this and that. But there was a lot getting to that just, kind of didn't, it just kind of took me out of things. I kept thinking, where are we going? Where are we going? What's going on here? Okay.
All right. And Noah, you're not crazy. I do remember this from our last slush pile, I think. So,
Wow, I usually remember these things. Wow.
Thank you, Penny.
all right. You're welcome. On to the last one.
Okay.
It'll come to me at 3 a.m. I'll wake up at 3 a.m.
Wow. Yeah.
You watch.
Okay, this one is creative nonfiction, The Caretaker. You say that you're having to make decisions with no support from me about Bob is the most asinine lie I've ever heard. You are a liar, Bill. You understand me, you manipulate, and you're going to hell for your behavior. You're going to effing hell. The text is to me. It's from Noelle, a 42-year-old woman who lives with my brother Bob. He is 83 and dying of Lewy body dementia. He can no longer stand, use the bathroom, or take a shower by himself, nor can he sleep in a regular bed. My brother may be 9 years older than me, but he is my best friend. Noelle lived next to Bob. I hired her part-time to help take care of him because she was a nurse, or so she said. I learned later that her license was revoked due to drugs and alcohol. When she was evicted from her townhouse for non-payment, she asked Bob if she could temporarily stay with him. The problem was she never left. When Bob's dementia progressed, she was able to convince him that I was taking his Social Security and attempting to take his townhouse. Bob hates you, Bill. He knows what you're trying to do. He wants me to have his condo to take care of me. Noelle left for 2 days, so I went to see him. He was lying on the floor in his feces and urine since the night before, when he fell and couldn't get up. When he lifted his head and looked at me, my mind snapped a picture that became an eternal memory. He died later that day in the hospital. I was holding his hand when he said his dying words. "You took my money."
No, I can't control it.
Okay.
Guys?
Did you hear that? There was some extra noise. I
Yeah,
don't
we
know.
got it. Good
Okay.
job.
I'll jump in and begin. First of all, I appreciate the last one in particular. I did a good job in my head of hurting my feelings for him, and in a way that I assume that will continue. And it feels like a setup I'm aware of, used to. That is to say, that someone who's kind of leeching off of someone who is not quite capable anymore. So there's something interesting about that for me as well too to look around on. The only thing I did was I did a little math to make sure I understood how old everybody was who was in this game, and to understand that Noelle feels like somebody who's going to be a problematic person into the future, not just someone we're dealing with in the present as well too. So I'm kind of interested in where we move from there, as a matter of fact too. But I thought it was an interesting piece overall, and had the potential for us to move forward. The only thing I have, of course, is that because Bob is now out of the situation in this conversation, my question is, how do we move forward? So what is the next step in this process? And it may be that once that next step is written, we may have to go back and plant a few more seeds here for me, so that I know that while he is the topic, he's obviously not the end all be all of this story. It's going to be, I assume, the conflict between Noelle and our narrator.
Yeah, I appreciated this little tactic our writer's using, with the text messages. I liked that. And I thought the impulse to drop the second text message where the writer did was right. It breaks the 2 paragraphs from narrator voice and takes us back to this sort of right now, right this second. So I will say the second text is more punctuated. It looks and sounds a little bit more like the paragraphs that it's between. And I don't know how in creative nonfiction, like how much liberty a person has, but like making it look more text messagey, getting rid of the punctuation and losing, capitalization and all that kind of stuff, kind of allows that text message to do even more in terms of like creating a break from a certain kind of writing and a certain style of writing, and then you get this different voice and a different font and a different everything, and then you go back. So I really appreciated that. I like that going back and forth. I think that was really helpful in breaking up the voice of the narrator, and bringing some immediacy to it and a different kind of energy. So I appreciated that. And yes, great last line. Like, yeah, good opener.
Not what I was expecting him to say.
Not at
Yeah.
all. Yeah, at all. I was like, oh, okay.
I was expecting this gushing emotion like my brother.
I was like, ooh.
And I got something else. I was like, oh God.
This is up to
That
something.
hurts.
I like this. What are you doing,
Yeah.
writer? This is interesting.
I felt that one in my gut when I read it.
Yeah.
I was like, oh,
Yeah.
not quite what I was expecting for
I was like Ozarks or something. That's good. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah. Sorry.
this. Anything else you wanted to say before I jump in?
No, go for it, Tracy.
Jumping in. This is a situation where Other than a few mechanical things that I'll bring up and just kind of point out, I would feel that I would have to read a little bit more to really be able to weigh in with something super constructive, because I'm not sure where we're going after this. So I would actually need to, as an agent or editor, I would have had to have turned this away at this point. As a developmental editor, I could have gotten another 10 pages in and go, oh, okay, now I know where we're going, what we're developing, what we're doing. So I'll offer that. So from a mechanical standpoint, take a look at the verbs, because we're going from present tense and then we're switching to past tense. And I don't know at what point Noelle left for 2 days. Was this, maybe when Noelle left 2 days later, or so? I don't know what kind of time frame we're moving in here from the first text to this. So keep in mind that we've got is, and it's from Noelle, who lives with, he is 83. And then we get into left, I went to see him, and we're back into some past tense. So that needs to be worked on mechanically. But here's the thing, that reason why I said I would need to know more before I could really offer something super constructive. And it's because of this. Anytime you're working with memoir or creative nonfiction, and you're in the driver's seat as the narrator and as the author.
Yeah.
And so when it starts off in basically what is an attack on someone else's character by showing that you have the power to publicly show what they have written to you, but they don't have the power to come back and explain, then you are setting that person up as a demon from the very beginning. And so right away, the reader begins to wonder how reliable our narrator is. Now, possibly quite very reliable, because there's a text message, but we don't know the story before. We don't know, people are very, very complex, and people have lots of things going on, and everybody's got some good and some negative.
Right.
So there is possibly another way that this might have started, which could have given us a little bit more, and done it in a way that doesn't come on the automatic attack of this other character, even though it's quite revealing, but it's also quite revealing of a narrator who would open that way, because the narrator immediately wants to draw in the sympathy of the reader for me, even though he deserves it, obviously, given what's going on here. But I don't know really, because I don't know the whole story yet. So I don't really, am I making sense?
You are. You're making very good sense. Yes.
So one of the things that I remember learning about memoir when I was doing it, and people kept saying, man, you made your ex-husband look like a saint. I said, I know. And there was a reason for that. First of all, we have a daughter that we share, and we have a good relationship. We didn't at that point of separating, and I could have really hammered him, and I could have really put it out there of how difficult our situation was. But I gave enough. I gave enough to make the story. So how much more did I need to give? So there's this thing about how much do you put on the page? How much do you pull back? How much really needs to be on there? Can I tell the story without going to certain levels? I don't know, because until I get into this and read more, I don't know whether this narrator is going too far, is going to turn off more readers than gain. I don't know yet. I don't know. He might actually even be setting up Noelle to end up, gaining sympathy overall before it's all over with.
Right.
I don't know yet. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah.
I think there's something notably hard about writing something that claims to be some version of fact when we do it, because especially if we have extremely hard feelings about the individuals afterwards. I'm hopping on what Tracy said here. We have to remember at the same time, we found them quote unquote attractive in the past. Something about them worked correctly, and tapping back into that can be hard. I do think so. I appreciate that. That is a hard a lift for people to do. But there's a reason, whatever those reasons may be, why folks chose someone early on, even if later on that has turned sour.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing. That's a hard thing to do.
Yeah. So I would just say keep playing a little bit more with this. Be thinking about that. Oh, I can't remember her name now. Her name's gone out of my head, but she talks about what it's like when you've got, some characters like this, and you've got to portray certain aspects of them that are not going to be very pleasant. But how do you go about and do that in a way that doesn't diminish you as the narrator, your credibility and your reliability, and make you look like the bad person because you actually own the power of the pen, so to speak. So there are techniques and ways to do that, and it requires a little bit of practice and just a little bit of gaining feedback so you can kind of judge whether you're hitting that mark just right. But keep at it. I mean, the story, I have a feeling there's going to be a lot here, but I don't know yet. But I'm hoping that there's going to be this story maybe about these two brothers and, that journey and what happens there. It may end up being that it's going to be about a whole legal suit that happens over this home or whatever. I don't know. But when we start off putting one person in the negative seat immediately, who does not have the power to come back and dispute, that hurts our narrator in the long run.
Right.
Just something to think about. Because we want this narrator, I have a feeling, deserves every bit of empathy, apparently. So just, let's don't water it down. Let's don't take it away from the narrator right up front. Hope that makes sense. Now we can see everybody. Hello.
We can see
Hi, you're still
everybody.
with us. We lost a couple of people. They said goodbye. They were chiming in the chat saying goodbye. I saw a couple of them.
Yeah,
Was this helpful at all, guys?
so much. Many, many, many thanks to the three of you and to Stevie Jane for reading for us as well.
Yeah.
This is
Oh, Stevie.
always one of the things I look forward to most and this year is this feedback in the slush pile. So thank you for your wisdom and your insight.
I love the
So-
You're
voices.
so welcome.
Huge round of applause for all of our writers who
Yeah,
submitted,
good
and huge
job.
round of applause for the
Good
judges
job.
and reader. Thank you,
job.
everyone.
Thanks
I
for
hope you
sending us
enjoyed.
such entertaining work.
Mhm.
Wow.
Really good stuff. Yeah.
Keep going,
Yeah.
guys. All right, you guys have a great weekend.
See
Thanks,
ya.
everyone. See you next time.